The deep song echoed through the crystalline corridors of Luminara, the greatest of the Meridani's underwater cities. High resonator Keelara felt the vibrations through her translucent skin as she glided through the bioluminescent halls, her fins rippling with concern. The song carried no joy today, only warning. They're coming. The song pulsed. The harvesters approach. Keelara's chromatophores flickered with anxiety as she entered the grand chamber, where the council of resonators had gathered. The chamber, carved from living coral and enhanced with crystalline technology, usually shimmered with the combined bioluminescence of hundreds of Meridani. Today the light was dim, reflecting the fear of her people. High resonator, first speaker Meryl's voice rippled through the water. The long-range sensors confirm it. A Vorox fleet has entered the outer system. His skin patterns shifted to display tactical data, an ability unique to their species that had evolved over millions of years of underwater communication. Keelara's tendrils curled inward. The Vorox, even their names sent currents of dread through the assembled council. They weren't supposed to be in this sector. The Galactic Assembly had assured them that the cybernetic harvesters were contained in the Carina arm. "Show me," she commanded, and the chamber's biotech interfaces came alive. A three-dimensional projection materialized in the water above them, showing their star system. The approaching Vorox fleet appeared as angry red points of light, moving with mechanical precision toward their world. 37 capital ships, Meryl reported, his skin patterns shifting to display numbers. And something larger, a harvester processor. The chamber erupted in patterns of fear and dismay. Everyone knew what a harvester processor meant. The Vorox weren't coming for resources or territory. They were coming to render an entire ocean world down to its component parts. "We have to contact the assembly," someone called out. "They promised protection when we joined." Keelara's patterns shifted to command attention. "Already done. I sent the emergency signal the moment our outer buoys detected the fleet." She paused, her chromatophores darkening. "They've acknowledged receipt. And they're convening a committee to discuss the situation." The chamber fell silent. In the 500 cycles since the Meridani had joined the Galactic Assembly, they'd learned that committees meant inaction. Bureaucracy meant death. "The Vorox will be here in 6 days. Meryl's patterns pulsed grimly. "The committee is scheduled to meet in 8. Keelara felt the currents of despair threatening to overwhelm the chamber. The Meridani were a peaceful species. Their technology, though advanced, focused on harmony with their ocean environment. They had no weapons that could hope to stand against the Vorox's cybernetic might. "What do they want?" a young resonator asked. "We have no resources they can't find on uninhabited worlds." "They want what they always want," Keelara replied, her patterns shifting to display historical data. "The Vorox believe that biological life is inefficient. They harvest living worlds, converting all organic matter into computational substrate. They see it as optimization." The explanation did nothing to calm the fear in the chamber. The Vorox were known throughout the galaxy as the Great Converters. They saw biological life as wasted potential, organic matter that could be better used for computing power. They didn't conquer. They didn't negotiate. They processed. "We need to evacuate," Meryl declared, his patterns showing population distribution maps. "We can't save everyone, but we might get our seed population to the deep trenches. The pressure might shield us from—" A new song interrupted him, this one coming from the long-range communications array. Keelara felt her heart sink as she recognized the frequency. The Galactic Assembly. The projection shifted, showing the face of Assembly Representative X-427, a silicon-based life form who had always treated the Meridani with what passed for kindness in Assembly politics. High resonator, X-427's crystalline form vibrated with formal tones. "We have received your emergency notification regarding Vorox activity in your sector." Representative, Keelara's patterns shifted to diplomatic mode, though she knew it was lost on the crystalline being. "We need immediate assistance. The Vorox fleet." Yes, yes, X-427 interrupted. However, there seems to be some jurisdictional confusion. The Voroks have filed proper mining claims in your sector. Mining claims. Merrill's patterns flared with incredulity. This is a populated world. We are assembly members. Indeed, X-427 continued, unperturbed. However, the Voroks delegation argues that since your civilization exists entirely underwater, the surface rights are technically unclaimed. They followed all proper procedures for establishing mining operations in uninhabited surface regions. Keelara felt her chromatophores darken with rage. The surface is uninhabited because we are an aquatic species. Our cities, our farms, our entire civilization exists in the ocean. You cannot simply. The committee will examine all aspects of this jurisdictional dispute. X-427 assured them. We take these matters very seriously. Now, regarding your evacuation requests, we can offer temporary relocation assistance to approximately 0.003% of your population, provided they can survive in standardized assembly environmental units. The chamber erupted in patterns of outrage and despair. 0.003%. 3 in every 100,000 Meridani. The assembly wasn't offering salvation. They were offering tokens to ease their conscience. Representative Keelara forced her patterns into calm diplomacy. The Voroks will be here in 6 days. They're bringing a harvester processor. You know what that means. The use of harvester processors is completely legal under assembly law, provided proper environmental impact studies are conducted. X-427 replied. I'm sure the Voroks will file all necessary paperwork. They're going to convert our entire civilization into computer components. Merrill's patterns flared so bright, they made the water boil. We are talking about genocide. That's quite an inflammatory accusation. X-427's crystalline form vibrated with disapproval. The Voroks have submitted extensive documentation showing that their processing methods are completely ethical and cause minimal distress to converted matter. Keelara felt something break inside her. Minimal distress. They were talking about the industrial-scale rendering of her entire species into cybernetic components, and the assembly was concerned about paperwork. The committee will examine all evidence. X-427 continued. We've expedited the process given the urgency. The first session is scheduled for. Keelara cut the transmission. Around her, the chamber had fallen into stunned silence, broken only by the deep songs of despair echoing through the city. They're not coming, she said finally, her patterns shifting to show what everyone already knew. The assembly will not help us. Then we are lost, someone whispered, their patterns fading to the gray of hopelessness. No, Keelara's patterns suddenly blazed with determination. We have 6 days. 6 days to try everything, to reach out to everyone. There are species outside the assembly, remote civilizations, emerging powers. Someone must be willing to stand against the Voroks. The assembly will see any intervention as illegal, Merrill warned. Any species that helps us risks sanctions. Then we find someone who doesn't care about assembly sanctions, Keelara declared. Someone who values life over politics. Someone who remembers what it means to face extinction alone. She turned to the assembled council, her patterns shifting to display a battle plan. Send out calls on every frequency, in every format we know. Reach out to the quantum-fold beings in the Crab Nebula. Contact the energy beings of the Pleiades. Try the silicon mines of the Outer Rim. Someone must hear us. Someone must come. As the council dispersed to carry out her orders, Keelara remained in the chamber, watching the projection of the approaching Voroks fleet. 6 days. 6 days to find salvation among the stars, or watch her entire civilization be rendered down into computational systems for beings that saw biological life as an inefficiency to be corrected. Someone must hear us. She whispered into the dark water. Someone must come. She didn't know then that someone would indeed hear their cry. She didn't know that far beyond assembly space, in a sector the Vorox had never heard of, a species that had evolved on dry land was about to prove that the greatest depths of courage could be found in the most unexpected places. But that revelation was still days away. For now there was only the deep song of her people, echoing through the waters of a world marked for harvest, calling out to anyone who might listen. The emergency transmission chamber pulsed with bioluminescent activity as Keelara monitored the streams of outgoing messages. 3 days had passed since the Vorox fleet's detection, and still no answer. Her chromatophores flickered with exhaustion. She hadn't rested since the crisis began. High Resonator, Merrill entered, his patterns showing the strain of sleepless cycles. The quantum collective has responded. Keelara's patterns brightened momentarily with hope. The quantum collective, beings of pure energy who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, were known for their advanced technology and general disdain for assembly politics. They expressed deep concern for our situation. Merrill continued, his patterns dimming. However, they regret that interfering in physical realm conflicts would violate their principles of dimensional non-intervention. Keelara's tendrils curled in frustration. Another refusal, wrapped in diplomatic courtesy. The chamber's walls reflected her darkening patterns as she reviewed their dwindling options. The crystalline minds of the Outer Rim had cited trade agreements with the Vorox. The Silicon Confederacy worried about assembly sanctions. The free worlds of Antares offered sanctuary to a dozen Meridani scholars. Barely enough to preserve a memory of their civilization, let alone save it. The evacuation, she asked, though she already knew the answer from Merrill's patterns. 20% of our deep-water population has reached the trenches, he reported. But the Vorox have begun seeding the upper waters with nanite clouds. They're mapping the currents, Keelara, preparing for full conversion. A new song rippled through the water. Another transmission. This one came from an unexpected source. The Vorox themselves. Keelara's patterns shifted to battle-ready alertness as she opened the channel. The holographic projection that materialized was a nightmare of biological and mechanical fusion. Admiral Processor Unit 7249 had once been organic, before the Vorox's optimization process. Now, cybernetic components sprouted from flesh that had been rendered down and rebuilt for efficiency. Biological entities of Meridani Prime. The Admiral Processor's voice carried the metallic undertone of all Vorox communications. Our preliminary scans indicate significant resistance to optimization among your population. This is counterproductive. Admiral, Keelara forced her patterns into diplomatic configurations, though she knew the Vorox had long since abandoned the ability to read such subtle communications. We are a sovereign species under assembly protection. Your presence in our system violates. Incorrect. The Admiral Processor interrupted. Our mining rights are properly registered. However, we are not unreasonable. We offer you the opportunity to participate in voluntary optimization. Merrill's patterns flared with rage, but Keelara signaled him to remain silent. Explain, she commanded. Submit to preliminary processing now, and we will ensure your neural patterns remain coherent during conversion. Resist, and the emergency harvesting protocols will be necessarily crude. The choice between efficient and inefficient optimization is yours. The transmission cut off, leaving the chamber in horrified silence. The Vorox weren't even pretending anymore. They were offering the Meridani the choice between systematic extinction and chaotic slaughter. We have to try the assembly again. Merrill's pattern showed desperate determination. There must be someone who will listen, someone who will understand what's really happening here. Keelara agreed, though her hopes had long since faded. Still, they activated the assembly emergency channel once more. This time, they found themselves facing not just Representative X427, but a full emergency session of the Assembly's Security Council. The holographic projections filled the chamber with a dozen different species, crystalline, gaseous, energy-based, and more traditional organic forms. All of them regarded the Meridani with what passed for concern in their various physiologies. Honorable Council. Keelara began, her patterns shifting to project both urgency and respect. The Vorox fleet will reach our world in less than 3 days. They have already begun seeding our oceans with convergent nanites. They have openly declared their intention to process our entire species. We beg you. Point of order, interrupted a gaseous being, its form swirling with bureaucratic precision. The term processing is currently under review by the Committee for Sapient Rights. Until a formal definition is established, we cannot. They're going to kill us all. Merrill's patterns flared so bright, they overwhelmed the holographic sensors. They're going to render our people down into component materials for their computers. How can you debate definitions while genocide approaches? That is a very serious accusation, rumbled a silicon-based counselor. The Vorox delegation has provided extensive documentation showing their convergent process preserves neural patterns. Technically, this may not qualify as. We have reviewed the Vorox's environmental impact statements, added another counselor, this one a creature of pure magnetic fields. Their harvesting processes are well within established guidelines for industrial-scale mining operations. We have also come to extend a different kind of invitation. A new representative spoke, a being of pure plasma contained within a specialized field. The Assembly is establishing a council for evolutionary diversity. We would be honored if the Meridani would consider taking a leading role. Before Keelara could respond, the Chamber's alert systems signaled another arrival. The human delegation had perfect timing, as usual. Admiral Chen entered, accompanied by Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and a team of human scientists. They wore the latest version of their underwater adaptive suits, now partially based on Meridani biotechnology. The integration of their technologies had proven surprisingly effective, humans understanding pressure and depth in ways other land-evolved species never had. I hope we're not interrupting. Chen smiled behind her transparent helm. But we thought you might want human observers present for this discussion. The Assembly representatives shifted uncomfortably. The humans' role as protectors of the Meridani had become formally recognized after several other Vorox mining expeditions had been decisively turned back by Earth Defense Force patrols. Actually, Keelara's patterns brightened. Your timing is perfect. We were just about to discuss the future of interspecies cooperation. She gestured to the Chamber's new central display, where streams of data showed joint human Meridani projects already underway. Deep-sea research stations, where human scientists worked alongside Meridani scholars. Defense platforms that combined Earth's quantum shielding with Meridani biotech. And most impressively, a new type of ship design that could operate equally well in space, atmosphere, or ocean depths. The Meridani accept your invitation, Keelara announced, her patterns showing firm resolve. But we have conditions. The Council for Evolutionary Diversity must have real power, not just to study different life forms, but to protect them. And humanity must be offered full membership in the Assembly, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The Assembly representatives stirred with surprise. Humanity had shown little interest in joining their organization, preferring to maintain independence while enforcing their own ethical standards through sheer force of will and overwhelming military capability. I believe, Chen interjected with another smile, that Earth might be willing to consider Assembly membership under the right conditions. Young Velan, now head of the Joint Human Meridani Research Division, entered the chamber with perfect timing. Her patterns were bright with excitement as she activated a new holographic display. We've confirmed it, she announced. The deep space surveys have identified 3 more silicon-based civilizations in previously unexplored sectors, all at risk from Vorox expansion, all ignored by traditional Assembly scanning protocols. Then we have work to do, Chen nodded. Earth Defense Force long-range units are already moving to establish protective cordons around those systems. But protection isn't enough. We need to change how the galaxy thinks about life itself. Keelara moved to the chamber's center, her patterns shifting to address all present. That's why the Meridani and humanity are launching a new initiative. We call it the Oceanic Accord, a commitment to protect and preserve all forms of life, whether they evolved in water, on land, in gas giants, or in stellar plasma. She gestured to the displays showing the newly discovered civilizations. We will not wait for them to face extinction before offering help. We will not debate their right to exist. We will reach out, share our knowledge, offer our protection. The currents of space connect us all. It's time we acted like it. The Assembly representatives, watching the smooth cooperation between humans and Meridani, began to understand just how much the galaxy had changed. The Vorox's attempt to harvest one ocean world had instead sparked an evolution in galactic civilization itself. There will be resistance, Anx 427 warned. Many species are invested in the old ways, the old hierarchies. Let them resist, Rodriguez said firmly. We didn't come to the stars to repeat the mistakes of the past. We came to learn, to grow, to protect. The oceans taught humanity that life finds a way. All it needs is a chance. In the cycles that followed, the galaxy watched as the Oceanic Accord grew from a simple protection pact into a revolution in interstellar relations. The human fleet, once seen as an outside force, became the foundation of a new kind of peacekeeping operation, one that judged civilization not by their form or origin, but by their actions and principles. Her survey vessel's manipulator arms carefully cleared away millennia of sediment, revealing markings on the probe's surface. Not assembly script, not Vorox cyber runes, but something else entirely. And there, barely visible under the growth of deep-sea organisms, was an image, a blue and white sphere, mostly covered in water, with landmasses rising above it. Control, she called, no longer bothering to hide her excitement. I need a xenorchaeologist down here immediately. And maybe someone from the First Contact Division. Hours later, the Abyssal Research Center was alive with activity. The probe had been carefully transported to a high-pressure analysis chamber, where the brightest minds among the Meridani surviving scientists worked to unlock its secrets. The design is elegant, Chief Researcher Zental observed, his patterns showing professional admiration. Simple by our standards, perhaps, but incredibly durable. This device was built to last, to survive extremes we wouldn't have thought possible for technology of its era. Keylera glided into the chamber, her patterns showing the strain of sleepless cycles coordinating the evacuation. Tell me something useful, Zental. The Vorox are still coming, yes, he interrupted, his patterns shifting to display his findings. But this changes everything. Look at the data storage system. It's primitive but genius. And it's still functional. After how long? Based on isotopic dating, at least 30,000 cycles. It's been waiting here, recording our ocean currents, analyzing our biology, cataloging our deep songs, waiting for someone to find it. Merrill, who had accompanied Keylera, flashed patterns of confusion. Waiting? Why not make contact? Why hide in the depths? Because it wasn't sent to make contact. Velan interjected, her patterns bright with revelation. It was sent to learn, to observe, to understand. Look at these transmission protocols. They're designed to gather data about new forms of life, especially aquatic life. But who ruled? Keylera began, then stopped as Zental activated the probe's main data core. A hologram appeared in the water above them, flickering at first, but then stabilizing. It showed beings they had never seen before, bipedal creatures on a world of both water and land. The images flowed like a deep song, these beings evolving from the oceans, developing technology, reaching for the stars. But unlike the assembly races, they never forgot their oceanic origins. Their sciences studied the depths as eagerly as the stars. They call themselves humans, Zental explained, his patterns rippling with excitement. And their world, Earth, is over 70% ocean. They evolved to live on land, yes, but water is in their history, their science, their very blood. But where are they? Merrill demanded. Why haven't we heard of them in the assembly? Because they're not part of it, Velen answered, her patterns pulsing with growing hope. Look at the trajectory data. This probe came from far outside assembly space, from a sector the Voroks have never reached. These humans, they're completely independent of the galactic political structure. Healera's patterns shifted rapidly as she processed the implications. Can we contact them? Does the probe have communication protocols? Better than that, Zentel's patterns blazed with triumph. It has detailed instructions for establishing first contact. These humans, they wanted to be found. They wanted to meet new life, especially life that evolved in the oceans. They even included quantum communication protocols that would work across any distance. They were looking for us, Velen whispered, her patterns showing wonder. Not to classify us, not to regulate us, not to convert us, but to know us. For a moment, the chamber was silent except for the hum of ancient machinery coming back to life. Then Healera spoke, her patterns showing the first real hope they'd seen in days. How long to establish communication? Using their protocols. Hours at most. But Healera, the Voroks, will be here in 36 hours, she finished. Then we have just enough time. Show me how to send them our song. The next hours were a blur of activity. The probe's communication systems were integrated with their own technology, creating a hybrid network that could reach across the vast distances of space. Into it, they poured everything, their art, their science, their history, their desperate plea for help. To the people of Earth, Healera began, her patterns recorded and translated by the probe's systems. We are the Meridani, children of the deep. Our world stands on the edge of extinction. The Voroks come to harvest our oceans, to convert our people into computer components. The assembly debates while we die, but your probe shows us that somewhere in this galaxy there are beings who remember what it means to rise from the waters, who understand that life can take many forms, who built machines to seek out new life rather than convert it. We call to you across the darkness between stars. We sing to you from waters soon to be poisoned. We are here. We are alive. And we need help. The message was sent, carried by quantum protocols that defied normal space-time limitations. Then, in the pressure and darkness of the Abyssal Research Center, they waited. They didn't have to wait long. The response, when it came, was short. It was not written in assembly standard, not encoded in formal diplomatic protocols. It was simple, direct, and carried more hope than all the assembly's treaties combined. We hear you. We come. Hold on. Attached were tactical data streams showing a fleet already in motion, a fleet larger than anything the assembly had ever fielded. The humans, it seemed, had also been preparing for something like this. They had been watching, waiting, building their forces far from assembly space. Not for conquest, not for conversion, but for this, to answer a cry for help from the deep. As the data streamed in, Velen's patterns shifted to show what they all felt. Not just hope, but understanding. The probe hadn't been just an exploration tool. It had been a promise, written in metal and left in the deepest dark. When life calls, humanity answers. The Voroks were still coming. The nanite clouds still spread through the upper waters. But now, for the first time since the crisis began, the deep songs of the Meridani changed from laments to battle hymns. Help was coming. From beyond assembly space, from beyond Vorok's territory, from a world of oceans and dreams, humanity was coming. And in the darkness of the abyss, where an ancient probe had waited so long to fulfill its purpose, the Meridani began to prepare. The final battle for their world would not be fought with committees and resolutions. It would be fought with courage, with determination, and with allies who remembered what it meant to rise from the deep. The Vorok's fleet arrived precisely on schedule. Their ships darkened Meridani Prime's skies like artificial clouds, their mining lasers already powering up to begin the harvest. In the heart of Luminara, Healera watched through the city's sensor arrays as the massive harvester processor took up position above their largest ocean. They're deploying the nanite dispersal platforms, Merrill reported, his patterns grim. Preliminary conversion will begin in 17 minutes. Around them, the emergency command center hummed with activity. The evacuation wasn't complete, couldn't be complete, not with their limited time and resources. Millions of Meridani still inhabited the upper waters, too many to reach the safety of the deep trenches in time. Any word from? Keylera began, but was interrupted by a new signal. The assembly making one final call. The holographic projection showed not just Representative Anx 427 this time, but the entire Security Council. Their various forms, crystalline, gaseous, energy-based, showed what passed for agitation in their species. High resonator, Anx 427's crystalline form vibrated with unusual intensity. We have detected unauthorized quantum communications from your system to unregistered entities outside assembly space. This is a severe violation of. The transmission suddenly dissolved into static. Above them, the Vorax ships began broadcasting on all frequencies. Biological entities of Meridani Prime, Admiral Processor Unit 7249's voice filled their waters. Your resistance is noted but irrelevant. The harvest begins now. For maximum efficiency, please remain in your current locations as the convergent nanites. This transmission, too, cut off. But not because of interference, because at that moment, space itself seemed to tear open above their world. The human fleet didn't arrive through normal FTL channels. They didn't request clearance or announce their presence through assembly protocols. They simply appeared, as if the very fabric of space-time had been folded around them. And they were massive. The Vorax fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming moments before, was dwarfed by the human vessels. These weren't the sleek, standardized designs of assembly ships, nor the cybernetic amalgamations of Vorax technology. These were ships that looked like they had been built by beings who understood both the pressures of the deep and the harsh vacuum of space. By the currents, Merrill whispered, his patterns showing awe. Those aren't just warships. Those are underwater assault carriers. He was right. The human fleet was designed not just for space combat, but for oceanic warfare. Their hulls were reinforced to withstand both vacuum and crushing depths. Their weapons were optimized for use in water as well as space. The assembly channel crackled back to life. Unidentified fleet, you are in violation of multiple assembly protocols. Stand down immediately or... This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. A new voice interrupted. Not mechanical like the Vorax, not formal like the assembly, but filled with a cold fury that needed no translation. We received a distress call from the Meridani people. We are here to answer it. This is an internal assembly matter. Anx 427 protested. You have no jurisdiction. We're not here for jurisdiction, Admiral Chen replied. We're here to stop a genocide. Vorax command, you have 5 minutes to withdraw your forces. After that, we will remove you ourselves. The Vorax Admiral's response was predictable. Your interference is inefficient. Our harvest rights are legally registered. The assembly. 4 minutes, 50 seconds, Chen interrupted. And let me be clear. We don't recognize assembly mining rights over living worlds. We don't acknowledge the legal status of genocide. We're here because someone asked for help, and that's all we need to know. In the command center, the Meridani watched in stunned silence as the human fleet moved into attack formation. Their tactics were unlike anything in assembly records. The larger ships took up positions above the Vorax fleet, while smaller vessels, clearly designed for atmospheric and oceanic operation, began descending toward the waters. 3 minutes, Admiral Chen's voice came again. Be advised that Earth Defense Force ships are equipped with anti-nanite countermeasures. Your conversion protocols will not function in our presence. This is your final warning. The Vorax responded with action rather than words. Their mining lasers, repurposed as weapons, lashed out at the human fleet. For a moment, the sky above Meridani Prime turned to fire. But the humans had been prepared for this. Their ship's shields didn't just absorb the energy weapons. They reflected them back, amplified and focused. The first volley from the Vorox fleet bounced back at them with doubled power, turning 3 of their ships into expanding clouds of debris. "Time's up," Chen announced. "EDF fleet, you are weapons free. Aquatic Combat Division, you have permission to deploy. Save who you can. Destroy any nanite concentrations you encounter." What followed was unlike any battle the Meridani had ever witnessed. The human ships moved with impossible precision, their weapons specifically calibrated to disable Vorox technology, while minimizing damage to the ocean below. The smaller vessels, now revealed to be advanced submarines, dove into the waters and began systematically destroying the nanite dispersal platforms. But it was the arrival of the human warriors themselves that truly amazed the Meridani. From the submarines emerged figures in powered armor unlike anything the assembly had ever produced. These weren't simple environment suits. They were personal vehicles designed for underwater combat, each one a masterpiece of engineering that allowed its human occupant to move through water as easily as air. "This is Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez of the Aquatic Combat Division." A new voice reached the command center. "High Resonator, we're here to help. Please direct us to the areas most heavily affected by nanite contamination." Keylera's patterns shifted from shock to action. "Sending coordinates now." "But the Vorox are being handled," Rodriguez assured her. "Focus on your people. We'll take care of the rest." Above, the space battle had turned decisively in humanity's favor. The Vorox's harvester processor, their greatest weapon, was now their greatest vulnerability. Its massive bulk couldn't maneuver quickly enough to escape the human fleet's coordinated assault. "Admiral Processor Unit 7249. Chen's voice came again, now edged with grim satisfaction. "Your harvester is disabled. Your fleet is in ruins. For the last time, withdraw or be destroyed." "This violation of efficiency will be reported," the Vorox Admiral responded. "The assembly will." The transmission cut off as a precisely targeted strike from the human fleet severed the harvester processor's command center. The remaining Vorox ships, their neural network disrupted, began to retreat in disarray. In the waters below, the human combat teams worked with astonishing efficiency. Their anti-nanite systems didn't just destroy the Vorox's convergent agents, they purified the water itself, leaving it cleaner than before. The powered armor suits moved through the depths with a grace that seemed impossible for land-evolved beings, as if they were reconnecting with their species' ancient oceanic origins. "High Resonator," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez reported, "the northern quadrant is clear. Moving to assist affected populations in the coral forests." Keylera watched through the city's sensors as the human warriors helped injured Meridani, their armor's medical systems adapting on the fly to treat silicon-based life forms. They moved through the water not as conquerors or saviors, but as allies who understood what it meant to live with the currents. The assembly channel activated one final time. "This unprecedented intervention will have serious diplomatic consequences," Anx 427 declared. "The violation of established protocols will be discussed at length, I'm sure," Admiral Chen replied. "But first, let me be clear. Earth now extends formal protection to the Meridani people and their world. Any future attempts to harvest their oceans will be met with the same response. If the Assembly has concerns about this, we'll be happy to discuss them, after you've reformed the policies that allowed this attempted genocide in the first place." The Assembly representatives withdrew, their various forms showing emotions ranging from shock to indignation to, in a few cases, what might have been shame. In the aftermath, as the human fleet secured the system and their medical teams helped treat the Meridani affected by the nanites, Keylera met with Admiral Chen in person. The human leader had donned one of their underwater adaptive suits to visit Luminara, and now stood, or rather, floated, in the grand chamber where just days ago, the Meridani had faced extinction. "Why?" Keylera asked, her patterns showing gratitude mixed with curiosity. "Why come so far, risk so much, for a species you'd never met. Chen's face was visible through her suit's transparent helm. She smiled, a gesture the Meridani had learned to recognize from their study of the probe's data. "Because you called," she said simply, "and because long ago, humanity swore an oath. When we first reached the stars, we promised ourselves that we would never stand idle while another species faced extinction. We've been there more than once. We've seen our own oceans threatened, our own existence questioned. We remember what it means to stand alone against the dark." She gestured to the waters around them. "Your people evolved in the deep, just as our ancestors did. Different paths, different forms, but the same origin. The same understanding of what it means to rise from the waters reaching for the stars. How could we not come when you called?" One cycle after the Battle of Meridani Prime, as it came to be known, Keelara stood in the newly rebuilt heart chamber of Luminara. The city's crystalline structures now pulse with a combination of traditional Meridani bioluminescence and human-designed quantum shielding, a fusion of technologies that represented the new era they had entered. "The Assembly delegation is requesting permission to enter orbit," Merrill reported, his patterns showing mild amusement. "They're following all the new protocols." Indeed they were. After the battle, humanity's intervention had forced a complete restructuring of assembly procedures regarding non-standard life forms. The fact that a single human fleet had so easily defeated both the Voroks and the Assembly's regulatory framework had sparked what humans called a wake-up call throughout galactic civilization. "Permission granted," Keelara responded, watching through the city's enhanced sensor arrays as the assembly ships carefully approached. They were accompanied by an Earth Defense Force escort, standard procedure now for any diplomatic mission to Meridani Prime. The assembly delegation that materialized in the heart chamber was different from the one that had dismissed their pleas weeks ago. Representative X-427 was still present, but now accompanied by a diverse group of new representatives, including several from previously unrecognized, non-standard species. High Resonator X-427's crystalline form vibrated with what seemed like genuine respect. "We come to formally present the Assembly's new Sentient Rights Charter for your approval." Keelara's patterns shifted to diplomatic mode as she received the document. The charter, drafted with significant input from human legal experts, represented a complete overhaul of how the Assembly defined and protected sentient life. No longer would bureaucratic classifications determine who deserved protection. "We are not a mine." Keelara's patterns blazed with fury. "We are a living civilization. We have art, culture, science. Our deep songs have echoed through these waters for 1,000,000 years. You cannot simply categorize us as raw materials for harvest." The council stirred uncomfortably. A few patterns shifted in what might have been shame, quickly hidden behind diplomatic neutrality. "The Assembly sympathizes with your situation," X-427 began, its crystalline form vibrating with practiced concern. "We have prepared a strongly worded resolution condemning the use of rapid convergent protocols without proper cultural preservation procedures. Additionally, we are preparing to establish a committee to review the classification of aquatic civilizations under existing mining regulations." A committee. Keelara's patterns faded to the gray of despair. "The Voroks will be here in 3 days, and you offer us a committee." "The wheels of galactic diplomacy must turn at their proper pace," intoned the magnetic field being. "Rushed decisions lead to poor policy. Now, regarding the proposed resolution, we should schedule a preliminary vote on whether to convene a voting session." Keelara cut the transmission. She couldn't bear to watch them debate procedure while her world hung on the edge of extinction. Around her, the emergency transmission chamber continued its work, sending desperate pleas into the void. "They're not coming," Merrill said quietly, his patterns showing what they both knew. "None of them are coming." "No," Keeler agreed, watching the nanite clouds spreading through their once pristine waters. "They're too invested in their systems, their procedures, their precious balance of power. They'll watch us die while debating the definition of death." She turned to the chamber's biotech interfaces, her patterns shifting to display new coordinates. Prepare a deep space transmission. Maximum power, all frequencies. But we've already tried all known civilizations in range, Merrill objected. Who else could possibly? Everyone, Keelara declared. Anyone. We broadcast to the dark between the stars themselves. We send our songs to the very edges of known space. Somewhere out there, there must be someone who remembers what it means to face extinction alone. Someone who still values life over politics. As the transmission chamber hummed to life, preparing to send their desperate plea into the unknown, Keelara didn't know that far beyond assembly space, in a system the Voroks had never bothered to notice, a species was about to receive their call. A species that had evolved on land, but had never forgotten their own oceanic origins. A species that had faced extinction more than once, and had sworn never to stand idle, while others faced the same fate. But that first contact was still hours away. For now, there was only the song of a dying civilization, echoing through the dark waters of space, calling out to anyone who would listen, anyone who would help, anyone who would come. The Vorok ships drew closer, the nanite clouds spread, and in the great depths of Luminara, the Meridani sang their songs of desperation into the void, hoping against hope that somewhere, someone would answer. Deep in the abyssal trenches of Meridani Prime, where the pressure could crush most starships into atoms, young Resonator Velan made a discovery that would change the fate of her species. She had been mapping evacuation routes in the deepest reaches of their world when her biotech sensors detected something artificial, something that didn't belong in these ancient waters. Control, this is Deep Survey Team 6. Her patterns pulsed through the specialized pressure comm system. I'm detecting unusual readings at coordinates 47 Mark 892. Request permission to investigate. Denied, Velan, came the response. All personnel are ordered to focus on evacuation protocols. The Vorok's fleet will achieve orbital insertion in 36 hours. Velan's patterns flickered with defiance. The object's energy signature was unlike anything in their database. In these final hours, what did they have to lose? Control, I'm experiencing communication distortion. She lied. Her patterns steady. Please repeat last transmission. Without waiting for a response, she guided her survey vessel deeper into the trench. The pressure at this depth was enormous, but the Meridani had evolved in these waters. Their technology was built for it, their bodies designed for it. What she found, half buried in the ancient mud of the ocean floor, should have been crushed to nothing. Instead, it was intact, a probe of some kind, its design completely alien to her experience. Impossible, she whispered, her patterns shifting to analysis mode as she scanned the object. The metal of its hull shouldn't have survived at this depth, yet here it was, apparently functional after who knew how long. The Voroks, faced with this unified opposition, began their own slow transformation. Some chose to reverse their cybernetic conversions, rediscovering their original organic nature. Others maintained their mechanical forms but abandoned their harvesting practices, finding new ways to grow and develop that didn't require the destruction of others. And in the depths of Luminara, where it had all begun, Keelara often met with human leaders to plan the next phases of their cooperation. The ancient probe that had first connected their species now sat in a place of honor in the heart chamber, a reminder that hope could survive in the darkest depths, waiting to be found. The Assembly thinks we've changed the galaxy, she said to Chen during one such meeting. But really, we've just helped it remember something it had forgotten. What's that? Chen asked, though her smile suggested she already knew. That the first life in this galaxy rose from the oceans. Keelara's patterns shifted to show ancient star maps. Whether those oceans were water, methane, or plasma, we all came from the deep. We all know what it means to rise, to grow, to reach for the stars while remembering our origins. And that's why we'll never let another species face extinction alone. Chen agreed. Because in the end, all life is connected. All we have to do is listen for the songs in the deep. Above them, Earth Defense Force ships patrolled alongside Meridani vessels, their combined technologies protecting not just one world, but a new vision of galactic civilization. And in the waters below, the deep songs of the Meridani had changed once again. No longer songs of fear or battle, but songs of hope. Songs of a future where the darkness between stars was lit by understanding, where the currents of space carried not conquest, but cooperation, where life in all its forms was valued and protected. The tide had risen, and it had lifted all ships with it. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.